You are lying in bed, the lights are off, and the silence in the room is so heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest. You are staring at the ceiling, trying to keep your breathing completely quiet. You do not want to move. You do not want to shift your weight. You just want the earth to open up and swallow you whole. Beside you, she is perfectly still. You do not know if she is asleep or just pretending to be asleep to spare you the humiliation, but you know exactly what just happened. The system failed. The engine stalled right when you needed it to run, and in that moment, your mind goes to work, doing the only thing it knows how to do when you are faced with a failure you cannot control. It starts manufacturing excuses. You tell yourself it was the heavy dinner. You tell yourself it was the 2 glasses of scotch. You tell yourself you have been carrying too much stress from the office, that the quarter is closing, that your mind was just preoccupied with a contract negotiation. You build a wall of logical reasons to hide behind because the alternative is to look the situation in the eye and admit that your body has stopped listening to you. I know the exact texture of that silence. I know the heat that rises in the back of your neck when you realize things are slipping away and you cannot force them back. I spent the last half of my 50s trying to outrun that exact feeling. I was a corporate sales executive, living in airports, sleeping in hotels, and running my life on adrenaline and leverage. I was the kind of man who believed that if you just pushed hard enough, you could overcome any obstacle. If a client was walking away, you found a new angle. If a quarter was down, you worked the weekend. I treated my body the exact same way. I thought I could command it to perform through sheer willpower. But you cannot bully your own biology. When you try to force a failing hydraulic system, you only end up blowing the valves. What happens after that night in the dark is what actually destroys us. It is not the physical failure itself. It is the elaborate, exhausting cover-up operation we launch the next morning. In my first marriage, I became an expert at the cover-up. Because I could not predict when my body was going to cooperate and when it was going to leave me stranded, I decided that the safest route was to just avoid the road entirely. I stopped initiating. I started picking small, meaningless arguments over the dishes or the lawn just to create a cold atmosphere in the house. I would stay up late watching television programs I did not care about, waiting for her to fall asleep before I went into the bedroom. I was terrified. I was a man who projected absolute confidence in boardrooms, but I was terrified of my own bedroom. When you hide from the problem, you do not just kill your sex life. You kill the entire foundation of trust in the relationship. You leave your partner entirely in the dark. She does not know about the panic you feel. She just sees a man who is pulling away, a man who is constantly irritable, a man who would rather look at his phone than look at her. She starts to internalize it. She starts to wonder if she is the problem. And because you are too proud to admit that your infrastructure is failing, you let her believe it. I lost years of my life to that silent, prideful isolation. I thought I was protecting my dignity. I was actually just burning my house down from the inside. What I had to learn, and what completely shifted my understanding of what was happening to me, was that I was profoundly misunderstanding the mechanics of the failure. I always thought that when things stopped working, it was a lack of arousal. I thought the signal from the brain was just too weak. I thought I needed to try harder, to focus more, to force the issue. But I am a guy who understands systems, and when I finally started looking into the cardiovascular reality of how the male body operates, I realized I had the equation completely backward. The problem was not a lack of effort. The problem was a massive systemic override caused by panic. I had to learn about the autonomic nervous system. Your body operates on 2 basic gears. You have the parasympathetic gear, which is the state of rest, repair, and digestion. And you have the sympathetic gear, which is the fight or flight response. An erection is a parasympathetic event. It requires the body to feel completely safe. It requires the blood vessels to be relaxed so that the endothelial lining can release nitric oxide, the gas that opens the pipes and allows a heavy volume of blood to flow in. But the moment you notice that your body is not responding the way you want it to, what happens? Your mind panics. You feel a flash of shame. You feel performance anxiety. And the second you feel panic, your brain shifts gears. It slams the entire system into the sympathetic mode. It dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream. Your body does not know the difference between the fear of failing in the bedroom and the fear of being chased by a predator. The chemical response is identical. Adrenaline is a powerful vasoconstrictor. Its entire purpose is to pull blood away from your extremities and force it into your vital organs so you can survive a threat. The moment you start worrying about losing your erection, you guarantee that you are going to lose it. You are literally flooding your own system with the exact chemical designed to clamp your blood vessels shut. You are standing on the brake pedal while desperately trying to turn the ignition key. I realized that every time I experienced a failure, I was digging the hole deeper. The next time I was in that situation, I would go in with a baseline level of anxiety, waiting for the failure to happen. The adrenaline was already in my system before the evening even started. The pipes were already constricted. I could not outthink it. I could not negotiate with it. I had to find a way to physically interrupt that chemical cascade. The breakthrough for me did not come from a medical journal. It came from a memory of a catastrophic sales pitch I was running in Chicago about 10 years ago. I was in a conference room with the executive board of a major client. I was losing the room. The numbers were wrong, the presentation was sliding off the rails, and I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. I was sweating. My vision was narrowing. I was in a full fight or flight panic, and the harder I tried to talk my way out of it, the worse it got. An older mentor of mine was sitting next to me. He put his hand flat on the table, leaned over, and said something very quietly. He said to stop talking. He told me to take a breath, admit to the room that the data was flawed, and ask for a reset. I stopped. I took a deep, deliberate breath. I looked at the client and I owned the failure out loud. I said the numbers were wrong and we needed to back up. The moment I stopped trying to hide the failure, the panic vanished. My heart rate dropped. The room did not throw me out. They respected the honesty. We reset the meeting and we eventually closed the deal. I realized I needed to apply that exact same mechanical reset to my own body. I needed a circuit breaker to stop the adrenaline dump the moment the system started to fail. I live in Scottsdale now. I am married to Alyssa. She is 9 years younger than me, and she is the kind of woman who values directness over comfort. She has no patience for games and no patience for men who hide. When we first got together, I was still carrying the ghost of my previous failures. I was terrified of being exposed, and inevitably it happened. We were together, the environment was right, and I felt the system stalling. The old panic surged up immediately. The heat in the neck, the tightening in the chest. The immediate instinct to pull away, to roll over, to blame the wine, to invent a headache. The adrenaline was preparing to lock down my vascular system. Instead of hiding, I used the circuit breaker. I executed a 1-minute physical and psychological reset. The very first thing I did was stop. I completely stopped trying to force the physical act. When a machine is overheating, you do not press the accelerator harder. You take your foot off the gas. The second thing I did was change my breathing. When you panic, you take shallow, rapid breaths through your mouth. That signals your brain to release more adrenaline. I closed my mouth. I took a slow, deep breath in through my nose, pulling the air deep into my diaphragm, and I exhaled through my mouth for twice as long as the inhale. There is a mechanical reality to this. When you extend your exhale, you stimulate the vagus nerve. That nerve is the physical brake pedal for your heart rate. It is the manual override switch that forces your body out of the fight or flight state and back into the rest and digest state. I took 3 deep, controlled cycles of that breath. And then I did the hardest part, the part that goes against every instinct of male pride you have ever been taught. I broke the silence. I spoke the truth out loud. I looked at Alyssa and I said, "The engine is flooded." I said, "My mind is spinning, I'm putting too much pressure on myself, and my body is clamping down." I did not apologize. I did not make an excuse about being tired. I just named the physical reality of what was happening in the room. The effect was instantaneous. The moment the words left my mouth, the massive, invisible weight of the secret evaporated. I was no longer hiding. I was no longer managing a crisis on my own. I was just a guy having a mechanical issue, and I was being honest about it. I watched her reaction. She did not look disappointed. She did not look disgusted. She actually looked relieved. She smiled, she put her hand on my chest, and she said, "Then let the engine cool off." We laid there for a minute. We did not try to fix it. We just talked. I kept my breathing slow and steady. And here's what happens when you remove the psychological pressure and you manually slow down your heart rate. The adrenaline clears out of the bloodstream. The brain realizes there is no predator in the room. It signals the all clear. The parasympathetic nervous system comes back online. The endothelial cells are allowed to relax. About 10 minutes later, without any forced effort, without any frantic attempt to regain control, the system rebooted on its own. The plumbing opened up because the panic was gone. That 1-minute reset changed the entire landscape of my life. It took away the fear of failure because I finally had a protocol for what to do when failure happened. I realized that the goal is not to be a perfect, flawless machine that never stalls. That is an impossible standard, especially when you're carrying 50 or 60 years of mileage on your chassis. The goal is to be a man who knows how to handle a stall without burning the car to the ground. When you start implementing this, it feels unnatural. Your pride will scream at you to stay quiet. Your ego will tell you that admitting a physical failure makes you less of a man. You have to ignore that voice. That is the voice of the guy who sits in the dark and lets his marriage fall apart because he is too scared to have a conversation. You are not that guy anymore. You have to respect the mechanics of your own vascular system. If you are struggling with maintaining an erection and you feel that familiar quiet creeping into the room, do not try to muscle your way through it. Stop. Take your foot off the gas. Close your mouth. Take 3 deep, slow breaths through your nose and make the exhale twice as long as the inhale. Force your heart rate down. Manually trigger the vagus nerve. Tell your brain that the room is safe, and then open your mouth and tell your partner what is happening. Do not make it a tragedy. Do not make it a grand confession. Just state the facts. Tell her your mind got ahead of your body, the pressure spiked, and you just need a minute to let the system reset. When you own the moment, you strip it of all its power. You remove the shame, and when the shame is gone, the adrenaline drops. When the adrenaline drops, the blood vessels open. I see guys my age completely checking out of their physical lives because they had a bad run of nights and they let the panic become a permanent state. They start avoiding their wives. They start looking for pills and quick fixes because they think the plumbing is permanently broken. The plumbing is usually fine. It is the operator who is sending the wrong signals. I try to explain this to my son, Ethan. He is 31 now. He is dealing with the high-stakes pressure of commercial real estate. He thinks stress is just a mental burden. I tell him that stress is a physical chemical that changes the shape of his blood vessels. I want him to learn how to break the circuit now, so he does not have to spend his 50s unlearning the habit of panic. You have to rebuild the trust with your own body, and you do that by proving to your body that you are not going to hit the panic button every time there is a slight mechanical delay. It takes practice. The first time you try to do this reset, your voice might shake. You might feel embarrassed, but you do it anyway. Because the alternative is going back to lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and letting the distance grow. The machine still works. You just have to stop flooding the engine with fear. Next time you feel the stall, do not hide. Run the reset. Drop the heart rate. Speak the truth. And watch how the system responds when you finally give it permission to relax. Simple as that.